Okay, so welcome everyone to our first Feature Flags office hours. And we're very excited about the fact that there's a lot of buzz around feature flags at the moment. And so we thought it would be a really good opportunity to do these office hours and let you ask whatever you want. So we have quite a bunch of people from the Progressive Delivery team that is working on delivering feature flags in the product, mostly around Unleash. And also people who can answer about Flipper and our development process. So I think we can get started and just go ahead and go over the questions. Unless Shinya, you have something that you wanted to add, or Andrew?
Nope.
So the first question that we had on the agenda, which no one really answered, but it's really important for us to understand is this a good time for the meeting? Because we want to make this a recurring meeting. So we wanted to know if there's any pushbacks regarding the time or if we can leave this in this slot. And if no one objects, that we'll just leave it as is. Okay. So the next question, which I'm going to voice over, is from Sherry, who's not on the call, and said that there's a lot of interest in terms of feature flags and customers, and there's some feedback that some customers wanted to ask us, so I want to go through them. Okay, so one of the questions was for on-premise installation. Regarding the API URL. And basically the answer here is that it doesn't matter if we're talking about self-managed or SaaS configuration, the APIs will work properly or the same. Then we have another question about segregation of duties. Who can turn on feature flags in production? Currently, there is no clear definition for enterprises how the governance process will work, since the control of flags are critical. So at the moment, it's kind of not really defined well, and we have two issues that I linked here that we have planned in order to overcome that. So hopefully we'll get to them soon. But this is a big concern also in terms of internal development in GitLab itself, because at the moment, for example, one of the differences between Flipper and Unleash is that Flipper, you have to have specific permissions in order to enable it. Sometimes you need to ask the delivery team to merge a request or to turn on a flag. And with Unleash, that currently isn't the process. But of course, once we start dogfooding internally, if that's the route that we go, we need to keep these permissions in mind because we don't want someone to abuse the system.
Just quick correction that actually the permission feature is not implemented in Flipper. Flipper is just like same system as well as Unleash is. But you know, we have a chat ops, and chat ops is a controller for feature flag, Flipper feature flag. And this chat ops tool has a bunch of like permission stuff and also like advanced. For example, you cannot edit feature flags during production incident, etc. Like there are a couple of guarding and the permission things. So like, you know, it's better to have such feature in our product or you know, like our GitLab feature flag. But yes, that's a current situation.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me, Shinya. Absolutely, the ChatOps project has different permissions than the development of GitLab, and that's how basically we control the permissions there. The next question is about the user list and the deployment strategy. So just to give a quick overview about what we're talking about, this is a really new feature that we just rolled out in 13.1. We previously supported user IDs as a strategy where you can make a long list of IDs, comma separated, and say that these are the users that are going to have the feature flag enabled. And we created a new strategy called list, which is a kind of container for all those user IDs, they're still comma separated, but the lists can be reused. So you only need to manage them in one place, and then you can copy them to different flags. And there was a bit of confusion about what we need to do there. So I added some clarifications to the documentations. Hopefully that MR will be merged soon. The confusion is around the user ID and how we perceive it in terms of GitLab. So when users use feature flags, we don't know their user IDs. It's a third-party user ID. So it can be an email or a numeric identifier or a username, doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be known to GitLab. It's totally third-party in that sense. And that's the clarifications that I added. Next is feature flag strategy for user percent is also confused with our deployment strategy incremental rollout. So actually feature flags and incremental rollout are kind of the same idea. Just one is for infrastructure and the other one is for a feature level. So when we do incremental rollout, the idea is that we take the entire development, everything, and we start incrementally rolling it out, deploying it to production very, very slowly, but it's everything. And feature flags lets you do the same thing, but on a smaller scale. It's feature leveled, so it's much more granular, and it's coming to be much more popular to actually combine the two. So feature flags with Canary, so that you have control both on the traffic, the audience that is going to get the entire deployment, that's the Canary or the incremental rollout, and on a feature granularity level for feature flags. So that way you can not only slowly turn off the entire deployment, you can start deploying everything with all the flags turned off, see that the deployment is working properly, and then slowly turning on the flags to see that each feature together with the new deployment is working as it should. So it's not contradiction, it's actually like the same idea. Okay. There are concerns on how to implement feature flags as best practices, code samples. I think this is really good feedback. We probably need to add more documentations and demos. And we have quite a few people now working on demos, both from the marketing team and from the sales team. So hopefully we'll get a deck across that could show users exactly how to use it, or at least be a good starting point. Next is the enterprise talking about asking container or image of Unleash as part of GitLab installation on-prem. They view feature flag as the mission critical system, so they don't want it to be an outside component. It's an interesting idea and we need to think about it. So basically just have the package of Unleash come as part of the installation of GitLab is what I'm understanding, which could be a good idea. I actually think we're going to skip from now the questions 3 to 6, because this was kind of something that I copied from Slack thread and that it was also answered in Slack. So I'll jump to the next questions, and if we have more time, we'll go back to them and revisit them. Okay, so we have questions here from Phil, who's not on the call, so I'm going to continue voicing over. I have been following the development and internal usage of feature flags that is underway. Can you give a brief summary of when we might see some of the open MRs merged, for example, the YAML change? So Kamil, okay. I see you're typing.
Yeah, so it's like the question number 7 is pretty well connected with the question number 9, and like these things are like there's like probably the biggest items. YAML definition got approved by Shinya and merged by Remy today. So like the fundamental pieces to have these like different types of the feature flags and also like kind of this kind of strong validation, but not really yet enforced. It's kind of more like a voluntary validation. It's like merged today. It's like we don't use that anything with that yet, because we don't like have these YAML definitions as part of the repository. But this is actually like the fundamental piece for the point B. And point B, based on like on point A, I just want to now prepare a documentation how this new process should look like, involve like everyone that is interested in this process, and like kind of merge this documentation before I actually merge point B and adapt usage of the licensed and ops and recover definition of the development type of the feature flags. So like the fundamental building block is merged already. The next step is really like getting this documentation in a shape that's gonna adapt the new process. And then as soon as we have this new process, we're gonna gradually work our way through ensuring that this feature flags usage is consistent across the code base. And this is where I use my proof of concept. I use my proof of concept to perform this kind of like a consistency validation of our feature flags to ensure that the feature flags that we use, they are used only in the specific context, like for example, license type of the feature flag or the ops type feature flag, but also they have like the consistent usage, I mean the default enabled setting. So I constantly rebase POC to have kind of this end picture, how like what kind of changes require the code base, the minimal amount of the changes that code base requires to ensure that we have these kind of strong validations of the feature flags. But this POC will never gonna be merged. It's kind of like a showcase to show like the amount of the changes and the complexity. But it's gonna be merged like the slices of this POC, and this is exactly what is right now happening. It's like probably right now I had 5 MRs out of this POC created. 2 of them got merged, and more are on the like being worked on right now. I'm not sure if it really answers your question, Mark and Phil, but like POC we shows here like the end picture that is never gonna be merged. But right now, like I'm kind of slicing that into things that could be like iterated, managed, merged without breaking anything that how we use the GitLab and the feature flags usage today. So kind of like doing the most minimal changes to ensure that we get to this kind of strong validation with YAML definition as part of the repo, but at the point where all of that is documented and people can really use that. But building blocks are there.
So I think Mark is here. Mark, did that answer your question?
Absolutely, very much. Thank you. It's awesome work, by the way.
Okay, great. Okay, so another question by Phil is, you recently rolled out the new feature flags for dogfooding on the customers and version applications. What would it take and roughly how long before we would be confident rolling out this across the other GitLab.com projects, such as GitLab.org? And the answer is that it is already available for all the projects on .com since 13.1, and self-managed customers will get it as part of 13.2. So it is available for everyone. Jason, did you want to voice over your question?
Yeah, sure. So mine was just, there's a few points there, but in general, it's about where are we going to go to win on feature flags in the market? Can you talk a little bit about how we beat our competitors and where we're headed?
Sure. I think I think we're kind of still in a preliminary stage, so it's really important to say that up front. I don't think that we're giving our competition a lot to worry about at the moment, but the biggest advantage that a customer using GitLab with feature flags would get is the fact that it's a single tool and the fact that everything integrates and talks together with one another. So we are working right now in this milestone for connecting a contextual issue with feature flags. So that means that when you have an issue that you're working on, you can link the feature flag that's linked to it and you can see the status on it. So you know if there's a flag on and off or off in that issue. We're going to expand that also for merge requests and for epics. Some other nice things that we're doing in terms of the all-in-one product is allowing markdown. So you can, in the merge request, do /flag on, flag off, and allow easy toggling of the feature flag itself from the MR. And something that we're talking also with the release management team is having it as part of your release process. So when you have your release page, you can see also there what kind of flags are connected to the release and how it's visible.
What do you think will be the moment where we show up on the radar? What's the thing that's coming that's going to do that?
So contextual issue is coming up in this milestone, and I think that's the first of everything that I mentioned. And then we're going to expand on them. So really, if you use everything, you get an all-in-one experience, which is great. Another thing that is really interesting that we're looking at, though it's still in an epic and not yet in actionable issues, is the idea of combining review apps with feature flags, which is super awesome. The idea is that you set a feature flag and then you can choose to be whatever user you want to be as a developer, and you can see how the feature behaves for different users inside your review app, which is super powerful. And I think that would be also a really big win for us.
Cool, thank you.
Shinya, did you want to voice over the next one?
Sure. So I recently had an interesting discussion with Marcel. This is about feature flag for development, and in our guideline, it says basically we add a documentation when we remove feature flag or when we make the feature flag enabled by default. But this process seems having a edge case that sometimes we roll out the feature flag globally on GitLab.com and test out the feature, monitoring performance, etc. And meanwhile, the feature is exposed to all users, but user has no reference about this feature. So they don't know how to use it, but it's just exposed for the test purpose. So actually what Marcel said was that we should add a feature, we should add a documentation at first before adding anything to the code base. More like adding a documentation before we enable the feature flag on GitLab.com. What, Kamil, do you have any feedback on this?
I don't really know. It really depends, because let's say if the feature flag is disabled by default, but you enable it for the system-wide GitLab as part of your rollout, and then everyone sees the new awesome button in the sidebar, and they're gonna start asking, why is this button dark for? Is it the time where we should have a documentation for this button, or is it still too early? Even though the default enabled is not really true yet. Does it mean that it's ready for the prime time, or we still kind of expect a major changes to this feature, so the documentation would be not fully accurate?
Yeah, right. So maybe we should document, like we still, like it's better to document that, like we sometimes enable this feature and then it might behave differently time to time, but like it's like everything is because we are still evaluating it. Like it just kind of announcement, like it's better to give our information to users, right? Rather than nothing, just showing it off without evaluation.
I'm kind of like thinking, because like documentation is to some extent something that is set in the stone. Maybe if something like is like so dynamic that we still work on, and like we know that it's gonna be presented under this button, instead of like going into very extensive documentation, just start with the like very shallow documentation saying we work on the like dark type of the visualization, and just link to the issue related to that, to kind of like the rights awareness. And like as soon as we kind of like concluded the design, like we changed that part with the actual documentation. But then like the question is really, is it really needed at that point? Because like one of the changes that I plan like to push with Marcel or like someone from the technical writer teams is like, since all our feature flags gonna be like kind of documented by default, we could really like create a list of all the feature flags that got added with their state and the link to the documentation. Because like, I mean, it's much bigger aspect. It's like the visibility for ourselves and like our internal users, which is like Jason, for example, product manager. Like it's really kind of hard, like for the product manager to discover that we have this feature behind the feature flag, but this feature flag is not yet enabled. So is it like, should we announce that, or like what we should communicate? So maybe like this problem is really like we shouldn't like preliminary document these things, but maybe we should have like the comprehensive table where we have all these feature flags kind of like automatically generated the list with the place where you could read more description about what this feature flag brings, and make it easier like to discover like what was added and when and how it's changed. Because like another aspect, like someone could go to that list, like we have gitlab.com, on-premise, staging, dev, gitlab.org. We have so many different environments, and each of these environments have different feature flags set. So if someone is running on-prem, they may be willing to try this awesome DAG visualization. And maybe they would be willing like to see that list of the feature flags that got like enabled or disabled, or like their state did change. So I have no idea about how to answer your question. It's like probably it's very gray, like how to approach that. But maybe like it doesn't have to be approached if we have like a slightly more comprehensive overview of what feature flags are there, what they are meant for, who owns that, what is their state, and where I can find more details about like what created that feature flag, I mean the change, and where is like the description about of the rollout of that feature flag. So maybe this would be like better way to kind of not really add a lot of to the processes, because it would be automated, but rather like make it comprehensive to everyone to have like the same understanding what this like description does provide.
I think what you're describing, Kamil, could even be a feature in the product. Like there could be a group page that's like the feature flag overview that, you know, if you go to in our case, if you go to gitlab.org and go to like feature flags, there's just a list of all the feature flags there, the context, whether they're turned on or off and in what environments. And yeah, I mean, maybe you also pull that into the docs or whatever and can generate it live on the fly there, because people naturally check the docs. But if I, you know, had my own little product and it had a few feature flags in it, I could send people there and say like, hey, if you're curious what's turned on or off, you know, go just check out gitlab.com/my-project-name/feature flags, and it will tell you the status of everything. That would be pretty cool.
Yes, it's actually pretty interesting because like one of the like aspects that we are also like discussing with Shinya and others is like annotating the feature flag in which context is being used, because some feature flags are scoped to the project, some feature flags are scoped to the user, and right now like we don't really make it like very well defined. So if you would know that, oh, this feature flag is on the project, we like system could really detect and show you what feature flags are maybe enabled in that specific context. And anyone like consuming the feature flag to see how to use them would also have this information ahead. This feature flag you can like enable selectively only on a specific user, but like project doesn't make sense in this context of this feature flag at all.
I was just thinking that, like, maybe, you know, feature flag. I'm now talking about our GitLab feature flag, and like developers of the project can go to the feature flag page and edit it and show the see the list of feature flag, right? But this feature flag list is not exposed to end users. So like they're releasing, they're deploying a new application to the world, but the end user has no idea like what the which feature flag is on and off. And I'm just thinking that how about like we publish the status of feature flags to the world with GitLab pages, for example. Like we can, like GitLab can summarize the feature flag state and expose it in real time, expose the feature flag states in the public place in the real time. So maybe it's kind of interesting idea.
Like expose what feature flags are configured on gitlab.com, right?
No. It's more like a like our product, GitLab feature flag, not specific to our GitLab development stuff.
Okay.
Like, you know, like we are talking about, like we have YAML definitions and we can generate a list of like feature flag state or definitions on the public page, right? And so like end users know that the current feature flag state of GitLab. And like, let's think about like auto deploy or like the user's application.
But you still like mention GitLab, right? So like you want to show like the feature flags that are configured for the GitLab itself that you are running currently, right? Or is it like, or is it about the GitLab feature flags as a product?
GitLab feature flag as product. Yes, I'm talking about that.
So like kind of like trying to have an like, because the current dashboard of the feature flag is like very feature flag centric. But probably the another dimension that you may be interested to look at is like environment centric. I want to see what feature flags are configured on that environment versus maybe another or just that environment, right? What is like the difference between them? Because like today, like you have a flat list of the feature flags, you have like a lot of overrides for each of them that can have different specification be on the environment. But like if you would like to ask the question, my staging, how it's actually configured, what feature flags are actually like enabled, what feature flags are have like their own specification that is specific to the staging. Like today, like with the GitLab feature flags, it's pretty hard probably to answer that question, if I'm right.
Actually, in the Unleash feature flags that we're developing, the UI has a dashboard that tells you the feature flags, and we have a bunch of issues that allow sorting and filtering, because once you hit a large number of feature flags, it's really hard to know what's going on there. And you could, you know, filter by your environment or by your scope or by your strategy, so that would be more visible.
Cool. So like environment could be like a filter, like you say staging can just show me like the feature flags, how they are configured for staging, right?
Yeah, of course, it's not implemented yet, but there's an issue for it. it looks like we're out of time. Is there anyone that has any additional question before we wrap up?
Maybe we should conclude with the Michelle last question on
Yeah,
our Michelle.
Sorry, it's a little hectic at my house. I've got people working on my roof. So I'll be as quick as possible, but back to the subject of when should we be documenting. During the iteration retrospectives, we kind of talked about, well, let's just document all the time and then we can clarify like this is experimental or this is beta. So that was kind of my question. Can we just do that more rather than waiting on it to be enabled, waiting on it to be complete, things like that? Kamil, you want to verbalize?
I'm thinking like what useful I can answer to you. I don't know.
Oh, you already did. Well, if we're already documenting today features that are not enabled by default, then I think that's kind of the answer.
Yes, but like it's not really like something that is like consistent across like the whole GitLab. It's rather like I believe different teams approach that differently. We do it, but just not always. That's the thing.
I agree with that.
I mean, like it's like a good suggestion. Maybe like you would be willing to create an issue in the epic detailing because like it's about like our internal usage of the feature flags, and it could be like interesting talking point. Like your question and Shinya, I think they are very deeply related. Like how we should handle documenting of the feature that is behind the feature flag and maybe not yet enabled. Like when it should happen, and maybe we could figure out exactly some practice that would work for everyone.
Yeah, maybe there's a room we can improve our documentation process with feature flags. So, yeah.
Cool. So I want to thank everyone for joining today's office hours, and we're definitely going to schedule another one probably in 2 weeks' time. And we hope to see you there. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good day.